A death row inmate who garnered a lot of support for clemency was executed just over an hour ago.
I believe in capital punishment. You commit the crime, you should be able to do the time.
At 6:01 p.m., the lethal injection of pentobarbital was administered. At 6:03 p.m., the 5-minute timer was set.
I think it's wrong to relieve from the death penalty somebody who has been found to be guilty.
Is saying we're going to use you as a human guinea pig, a human lab rat, to kill you.
This is the order. That sets the date. And then within 10 days, you sign what's called the warrant of execution.
It's really hard to gauge how effective the law is in terms of deterrence and other factors.
He crossed racial, gender, and city boundaries to commit his murder.
The tragic story. The tragic saga of Jay Pinkerton, which began on October 26, 1979 in Amarillo, Texas, left a profound mark on the community and law enforcement. It unfolded against a backdrop of familial loss and multiple brushes with the law, culminating in Jay's execution at the age of 24 on May 15, 1986. Jay Pinkerton's story is one of profound tragedy, marked by the untimely slayings of several of his siblings, each shrouded in its own heart-wrenching circumstances. The slayings of his brothers Michael, Kenneth, Roger, and Alan, spanning from suffocation to self-harm to a fatal car accident, cast a shadow of grief and loss over the Pinkerton family. These tragedies, occurring over the span of decades, foreshadowed the harrowing events that would later unfold. Jay Pinkerton's descent into infamy began with a gruesome slaying, setting off a chain of events that would ultimately lead to his ending.
A death row inmate who garnered a lot of support for clemency was executed just over an hour ago.
It's really hard to gauge how effective the law is in terms of deterrence and other factors.
He crossed racial, gender, and city boundaries to commit his murder.
I think it's wrong to relieve from the death penalty somebody who has been found to be guilty.
Despite being one of the youngest ending row inmates in Texas history, Jay faced the prospect of demise by lethal injection on 3 separate occasions before his ultimate ending in 1986. Each time, the ending was postponed, prolonging the agony for both Jay and the community. The legal battle surrounding Jay's fate saw multiple appeals and stays of ending, with the Supreme Court ultimately ruling against him. Despite desperate attempts to secure a reprieve, including a handwritten appeal delivered by his mother Margie to U.S. District Judge Hayden Head, Jay's efforts proved futile. The decision to proceed with his slaying, despite the impassioned pleas for clemency, underscored the gravity of his crimes and the desire for justice. Throughout Jay's tumultuous journey, the Amarillo Police Department played a central role in his apprehension and incarceration. Retired Officer Randy Tenbrink reflected on the Pinkerton family's tragic history, expressing empathy for Margie Pinkerton, who bore the weight of her son's actions. Despite their efforts to intervene and address Jay's delinquency, law enforcement officials found themselves grappling with a recurring cycle of criminal behavior. Legal proceedings. Jay Kelly Pinkerton, a notorious criminal in Amarillo, was known to police officers who patrolled near his home. Tenbrink, a 3-year veteran of the Amarillo Police Department, reported that the police received complaints about Pinkerton related to offenses such as trespassing, window peeping, and burglary. Pinkerton's record was that he would take money if found lying around, usually checking women out. When they heard about Sarah Dawn Lawrence's slaying, Tenbrink and APD Sergeant Dennis Hendley went to see him. Tenbrink and Hendley found Pinkerton at a Mexican food place called Abuelo's. They knew him and suggested that one of his MOs was to pretend like he was using a payphone to avoid getting caught. They chased and arrested Pinkerton, who turned right down an alley and tried to go over a fence. Tenbrink caught him just as he was about to top the fence and go over on the other side. Pinkerton was handcuffed and informed of his rights immediately. His hair was slicked back, suggesting he had just finished showering or had some wet-look hair gel. Tenbrink said that the then 17-year-old Pinkerton was silent on the way to the patrol car. Tenbrink and Sergeant Hendley took him to Amarillo's police station, where he was booked on suspicion of parole violation. He was released 3 days later on October 30, 1979. Sarah Dawn Lawrence, a 30-year-old woman from Kansas City, Missouri, was slayed by Jay Kelly Pinkerton in 1979. She and her husband David had 3 children, and attended Polk Street United Methodist Church. On October 26, 1979, David found Sarah lifeless at their home after being physically attacked and knifed repeatedly with a replica Bowie knife. The doctor who performed her autopsy testified that it had been 30 times. Tenbrink and Sergeant Hindley later brought Pinkerton in on suspicion of a parole violation, and he remembers seeing David and the kids wrapped in blankets. The Lawrences' lives were changed forever when Pinkerton was arrested. Sherry Lynn Hales Welch, a 25-year-old beauty pageant participant and her high school sweetheart, was slayed on April 9, 1980, while managing her family's furniture store. Reflections in the Amarillo Wolflin Village Shopping Center. Welch was stabbed more than 30 times and physically attacked, just as Sarah Dawn Lawrence had been over 5 months before. Prosecutors said that Pinkerton used the sink in the back of the store to clean himself up after slaying Welch, and then went back to work at an Amarillo meatpacking plant. Tex Welch, who had married Tex Welch, suspected that the Amarillo Police Department was avoiding charging Pinkerton with her slay because of the guilt of mishandling the Lawrence slaying investigation.
I believe in capital punishment. You commit the crime, you should be able to do the time.
Is saying we're going to use you as a human guinea pig, a human lab rat to kill you.
To consider the individual defendant, but consider the individual victim, who has been found unanimously to be worthy of the death penalty by a jury.
Thousands of dollars were donated to a reward fund to entice anyone with information on Welch's slaying to come forward. Welch's family wanted answers, and Tex subpoenaed the case file of his wife's slaying and told the Canyon Sunday News that Amarillo police had not been to the store where Sherry was slayed to take fingerprints until the next day. Pinkerton, who had been arrested and held in police custody for slaying Lawrence on September 26, 1980, was not indicted for Welch's slaying until July of 1981. The family took a meeting with then Amarillo Mayor Jerry Hodge, who later told KAMR Local 4 News that telling them that her slaying had been preventable was the worst thing he had to do during his 2 terms as mayor. Legacy of Justice. In 1979, Amarillo Mayor Jerry Hodge canceled Halloween due to the fear caused by Sarah Dawn Lawrence's slaying just a few days before it. Pinkerton, who was arrested on the night of Lawrence's slaying, was released from police custody on October 30, 1979, while investigators worked through leads on hundreds of other suspects. The Special Crimes Unit was created due to the horrific nature of both cases and the amount of work involved. The creation of the Special Crimes Unit in 1981 opened lines of communication and fostered cooperation between law enforcement agencies. The investigation process was much less organized at that time, with people conducting their own investigations and evidence getting rat-holed in a desk drawer. Court documents show Pinkerton left a bloody palm print on Lawrence's body and on the coffee table next to her, which ultimately led to Pinkerton's arrest nearly 1 year later. Plaintiffs taken at the scene of Lawrence's slaying were what ultimately led to Pinkerton's arrest nearly 1 year later. 2 Amarillo police officers testified that they saw footprints in the alley behind the Lawrence's house and followed them to the alley across from Pinkerton's house. One officer said the tennis shoe tracks matched in size and pattern the shoes Pinkerton was wearing that night, but no measurements were taken of the prints at the time. At 18 years old, Pinkerton was arrested for Lawrence's slaying 11 months to the day after it happened, on September 26, 1980. By that time, it had already been months after the slaying of Sherry Hales Welch. The creation of the Special Crimes Unit in 1981 and its subsequent expansion into APD's Homicide Unit in 2017 have significantly improved the investigation process and fostered cooperation between law enforcement agencies. The Amarillo Police Department underwent significant changes after the arrest of J. Kelly Pinkerton for the ending of Sarah Dawn Lawrence. The then police chief, Leland Lee Spradlin, was forced out by the city leadership after he lost the faith of both the community and the commissioners. Hodge explained that Spradlin resigned after a motion to fire him failed during an Amarillo City Commissioners meeting. He worked with longtime Amarillo City Manager John Stiff, who agreed to correct Spradlin's resignation. After Spradlin left, many Amarillo police officers were either fired or resigned, with Jerry Neal serving for 25 years. The department's changes were seen as improvements, but remnants of the cowboy work style of investigation remain in the intensity with which officers approach their cases. In 2023, cases still result in investigations where records and evidence require multiple crates to hold. The Amarillo Police Department investigators continue to push for justice and put people behind bars, even though there is still much work involved in creating case files. Lieutenant Clemens said that they will never stop looking at cases from the 1970s, 80s, and current decades. The department continues to look at cases from the 1970s, 80s, and current decades. In 1986, J. Kelly Pinkerton was convicted of capital slaying in both the Lawrence and Welch cases, receiving an ending sentence.
At 6:01 p.m., the lethal injection of pentobarbital was administered. At 6:03 p.m., the 5-minute timer was set.
He is innocent, but he confessed to the killings because he could be excused for the rest of the hearing.
Those who support the death penalty are frustrated. Their adversaries accuse them of being in an unseemly rush to impose the ultimate penalty.
This is the order. That sets the date. And then within 10 days, you sign what's called the warrant of execution.
Although the Amarillo Police Department may have shifted in a better direction, the pain left in Pinkerton's wake remained. Neither Sarah Dawn Lawrence nor Sherry Lynn Hales Welch would ever come home. Ten Brink stated that the families of the victims received as much justice as the justice system is made to give out. His last words before his ending were, "Be strong for me," Pinkerton told his father, Gene Pinkerton, as witnesses enter the ending chamber. "I want you to know I'm at peace with myself and with my God," Pinkerton said. He recited a prayer to Allah, the supreme being of Islam. "I bear witness that there is no God but Allah. With your praise I ask for forgiveness and I return unto you," Pinkerton said. "I love you, Dad." That's all for this video, folks. See you next time.